massive episode if you are a grom spearo in Australia learning how to start. Really good news today. There's going to be a bunch of qualified people in spearfishing clubs around the country that are now going to be teaching freedive courses for spearos. Today we chat all about it. Tom Sandstrom joins me for at least 45 minutes before Adam Stern drops in as usual late. There's a shot at Adam for you. Shots fired. But I had an absolute ball chatting with Tom, and then Adam joins us later, and we talk all about how a whole bunch of really cool people from spearfishing clubs around Australia have been put through this instructor training course here with Adam Stern. And if you are interested in one day becoming an instructor yourself, then you're going to enjoy this. If you are a grom, or if you're interested in just spearfishing clubs and improving the way we do this thing and the way we educate our noob spearos, this is a cool episode. Tom's a mad dude, and he's been a listener for a long time, and I've really wanted to just chat with him more anyway. And I feel like I'll probably be reaching out to Tom again and hanging out with him again, possibly at one of the comps they run down there, the Coffs Blue Water. But anyway, I wanted to get into this. We're gonna chat all about this with Tom in just a second. Before then, I had a ton of shout outs. Now, if you ever hear anything on the Noob Spearo podcast and you're not sure where to find the links, I would encourage you to go up into the noobspearo.com, head up into the show notes. There's a podcast section, and scroll down and you'll find the episode. This one today will just be titled Australian Spearfishing Courses. So if you go to noobspearo.com, go to the podcast tab, find the show notes for this. I'm going to link this thing up here. It's with William Forbes, who is doing evidence-based research into breath hold training for freedive spearfishing, well, for freediving really, but also highly applicable to spearos. The instructions there for entering this study are right there, but obviously the more people he gets, the larger sample size, the better and the more effective and the more robust the data set is going to be for him to work with. So basically this online study will give you different breath hold activities to perform, and then there'll be before and after metrics. I'd encourage you to check it out. Go to today's show notes, go to noobspearo.com, find Australian Spearfishing Courses. I'll link up William's email. You email him, he gets you involved in the study. I would really encourage you to do it. Check it out. William Forbes, he's a cool dude. Know him from the Brisbane Bull Sharks. Check it out. Another thing I really like is robust feedback, and apologies for the longer intro today. However, I want to do it justice. Kath sent me an email from New Zealand. She said, "Kia ora from NZ Trek. Hope things are going well over on your side of the ditch. Just wanted to take a moment to say how much I've been loving your podcasts." And then she gets into the robust feedback, which is really good, and just helps me to do a better job on the podcast, which is 100% what I want to do. And this is kind of an issue that's been, sort of growing in my awareness for a little bit of time. But she says there are a lot of female spearos in New Zealand, and a few of them love listening to the podcast. But a lot of the language that we use on the podcast, she says it sometimes feels a bit like a boys' club. And it's only a small thing, but, when we're trying to communicate a lot of the messages to spearos from all walks of life, we need to probably just use a bit better language instead of just he, him, spearfisherman, and things like that. But anyway, she says she's just a little bit of feedback for me and the guests, just to be aware that it's not just boys that go spearing. And it was fantastic. So really thank you for the feedback, Kath. And we've been emailing backwards and forwards, and she's it was invaluable, this bit of feedback. Anyway, she says, all in all, you guys are making a killer podcast. Appreciate the time and effort that goes into making each one. Loving the content and style of presentation. Keep up the hard mahi. And so thanks for that, Kath. I like the emails that give me some constructive criticism as well. So keep them coming. Again, apologies for this longer intro, but the Freshwater Worlds at freshwaterworlds.com. They are still looking for people to come in and lock down some spots. They've got fantastic events. There's a one coming up. Just check it out. Mike has just referred people to the website, freshwaterworlds.com. Check it out. You can see any and all events that are upcoming on their calendar. It's a cool competition, great opportunity to meet, legendary spearos from all over the planet and have a ball doing it. Also, Darcy sent me a link to a really cool episode of another podcast called The Outflow. and it's really Australia-centric, but they're talking about yellowtail kingfish, or, I think the greater amberjack is their sort of their common sort of name. But anyway, he sent me this episode because it's got a lot of the science and the data coming in, and there's a sort of a panel of guys talking about it. It's really cool. The episode goes for an hour and 30 minutes, but it's just a massive chat about yellowtail kingfish in Australia, as presented really from a scientific point of view, as relevant to recreational fishes, which spearos are. But anyway, I don't want to muck around too much. I've done so already. Let's get into this episode. Tom Sandstrom, really super cool guy, and later on we get bombed by Adam Stern as usual. Here we go. Noobers, I interrupt this Noob Spearo intro to give you some breaking news. Adreno are opening their 5th megastore Saturday, May the 1st. That's Saturday, May the 1st. They're opening a huge spearfishing shop. I believe it'll be the biggest in the country. On the Saturday, I'm hoping to get down there, do some live interviews and meet some people as well, if I can get the day off work. But Adreno are giving away 500 sample bags valued at over $100 each at the event. Anyone who makes purchases over the weekend goes in the draw to win a Bunker Group spearfishing charter trip. The first 100 people in the line will go in the draw to win special gear, and they'll have videographers there. There'll be food and awesome stuff going on. It'll be an exciting time. Saturday, May the 1st, Adreno at their brand new megastore. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Partners of the Noob Spearo podcast, Neptonics.com. Neptonics offers the best spearfishing gear, spear guns, carbon fins, spear gun parts and packages at the lowest prices. Go to Neptonics.com, use the code NOOB10 to save 10% off anything at Neptonics.com. NOOB10. Boom! G'day Noob Spearo community. Today it's Tom Sandstrom at Tommy_Doz on Instagram. Tom's been chatting backwards and forwards with us for years. He's been a long time listener. He's recently completed his instructors under Adam Stern. Adam was going to join us today, but he must have got carried away doing pranayama yoga or something, Tom.
I saw on Instagram he's chowing down on a bit of lobster and abalone down there in the south. So
he did tell me he was going to be in South Australia. So was he still running a course down there?
Yeah, they've got a deep week, I think.
Okay. So when did you finish up? Like with your course? Is that have you met all the requirements? Is it done and dusted?
Yeah, we're done. We finished last Sunday, so it's I don't know what the date is now, mid-March, and we finished a week ago. Yeah, so that was good 2 weeks. Bit of a crash course. There was a lot to learn, but yeah, everyone came out the other end looking pretty good.
But you've been spearing down there. You live in the Coffs Harbour area. You've been a deep diver and you've been in the water your whole life. Tell us a little bit about that and what's led into this instructor course, and then I want to get right into this instructor course.
Yeah, so I just kicked around the rivers and headlands with my brothers as young guys, sort of south of Coffs Harbour, Urunga, Bundadjan, that sort of area. We never really knew what we were doing, but we'd get, bream and blackfish and flathead and kept going that way for years and years and years. And as I was saying, it wasn't until we sort of started listening to Noob Spearo that we actually learnt a few things and started getting better fish. And my youngest brother bought a boat and away we went from there. We joined the club, and the older guys around Coffs sort of took us under their wing and taught us plenty. And still got a long way to go, but enjoying the journey as everyone does.
Hey, bloody awesome! And you've turned around like, I don't know if have you listened to the Death Piles interview yet?
We listened to it on the way back from Jervis Bay in the car. Yeah.
So are you familiar with that sort of 6 stages of maturity of a Spearo, or the?
I am now. I wasn't before.
Okay, cool. Well, I would definitely put you in that stage 6, that statesman category. Like, you're heavily involved in your club. You've been taking groms out and like, as much as you've learned from listening to legends from all over the world, you've given straight back into your own community. So hats off to you. Is that what this instructors thing's about as well?
Yeah, it's our club has sort of got to a stage where there's a few guys around my age, and then anyone older is well and truly retired, 60, 70, 80 years old, and don't want to have anything to do with it. And then a bunch of young guys coming through. And then as well as, last year there was a few deaths and guys diving by themselves. And we sort of got together and we're like, you see the young guys jumping in by themselves, and they watch all the gun divers on YouTube with the diving deep with their real guns and think that they can do it. And we sort of thought we'll get a little training thing together and try and change the attitude and culture towards diving deep and by yourself and all that sort of thing, and teach the young local guys that you don't have to dive super deep, and eventually you'll get there, but don't rush the process, enjoy the journey, and brought them along with us. And it's gone from us training together and giving a few pointers to mates' sons to the club growing, and it's become quite a successful little venture, and it snowballed. One thing led to another, and talking with Adam, he said, why don't you come and do an instructor's course? And I said, we were thinking about doing it, but we were going to do it with the club. And I spoke to Adrian Wayne from the RUF, and it sort of one thing led to another, and now we're going to try and get instructors in every club around the country, and we're going to develop a freediving for spearfishing / spearfishing safety course that these instructors in each club can teach to other club members.
That's bloody awesome. That's excellent. So what is your club, and how many members have you got?
The Coffs Harbour Blue Water Freedivers. I don't know exactly how many members we've got. We ticked over 50 last year, so we'd be between 50 and 60, I guess, now. I suppose it was 4 years ago when we joined. I think there was 6 or 7, and the average age was about 70, and it was dead and gone, more or less. And
the club scene's changed. Yeah, like a lot of the way spearfishing as a lifestyle pursuit is sort of, it's changed and evolved over the years, and I think spearfishing clubs, in a way, some of them haven't kept up with it. Like, I still love a lot of it. Like, they provide free training, and sometimes they have social comps, sometimes they have proper competitive comps, and then of course they lobby government. They try to keep these community groups going. I think back in the day, sort of one of the added advantages or the desires of the average member was to get in on boats and to learn stuff from legends. And it takes a conscious effort of experienced spearos like yourself to really turn around and give back. Like, I know last week I had a learner guy out, and it's an exercise in patience. Like,
oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
like, we've tried to really push with the comps to there are a few guys that are super competitive, but most of us don't really care whether we get fish or whether we win the comp. And we try and get 2 or 3 experienced crew on a boat, and then take one of the teenagers or one of the grommies, and just run them through a few bits and pieces and try and put them onto a good fish or 2 during the day. And for me personally, that's far more rewarding than winning a club comp. They at the end of the day, they don't mean anything. It's just bragging rights, really. And we have a separate comp outside comps, I guess, which we call best of the best, and that's just a competition that you can weigh your fish in when you're diving socially, and that's sort of what everyone tries to win within our club. We use the comp days as a bit of a social day, and just to get not just young guys, new crew that are coming along, get them out in a boat and learning a few bits and pieces. And that attitude shift in our club's been phenomenal, and that's, I think, why it's growing. And like you say, you join a club so you can get out on a boat and learn things. And I think a lot of clubs had lost that because people, it is hard. It's hard to dive with new guys all the time, and that's why we sort of just say, just do it once a month.
Once a month, to be honest, I get out probably twice a month. That'd probably be my batting average to get out spearfishing. And like in Brisbane, it's a full day effort. Like, I'm driving for an hour, and then I'm in the boat, and then we're out. And I don't want to cut a day half. If I've got the day, I'm making it a day. I get home, I'm wrecked. And I think there's a lot of people like that. And yourself, you get older, you get busier, you have children and a family, and giving time to new people is definitely. It's definitely an effort, but it is something that, good people choose to do. And none of us would get started if someone hadn't given us some time. So cats off to you. Yeah. With the courses, are you formalising that? Is it becoming? Is this?
Yeah, it will become formalised. So this is sort of just the first stage. A lot of old school spearos will turn around at us and say, "What are you doing? We're not free divers. You don't need to know any of that crap. It's a waste of time." And we're not snorkeling. You're not swimming around on the surface looking at fish. You're holding your breath and diving to shoot a fish. So regardless of what they think, you are free diving to an extent. I understand that it's a completely different ball game, and there's you're not diving up and down a line, but the science behind it all still applies. And once you understand that, I think it helps you become a much safer diver. And once you drill and train diving together, one, it's more enjoyable. You get more fish. You're with your mates the whole time, and two, you're infinitely more safer because your buddy's your only safety network. And so we just need to change that culture. I think not everyone agrees, and I understand that. It is we've all done it, and it is fun jumping in on a headland by yourself and shooting a dew or something without someone ahead of you, beating you to the hole or whatever. But you can still do that with your mate. There's more than one hole on every headland, and it's more fun when you're working as a team, I think.
Yeah. I guess one of the old guys' arguments is that, like, new spearos typically aren't the ones that suffer shallow water blackout and die. Generally, guys go diving for about maybe a year, or it depends how much time in the water they get, but they gradually get, if they stick with it and they persevere through shit fizz and cold water and sharks and, avoiding all of the other little mishaps and stuff that can put you off, because if you jump in a day and the swell's too big and your mask's fogging up and the water's cold and your buddy's just already started walking back to the car, if they've managed to persevere through a whole lot of days like that and they've survived a year and they still love and froth on their spearfishing, because that's kind of separates the wheat from the chaff, that's when they start to dig into the information and start to learn some of the things that can start getting them down into, your serious depths where they can get in more trouble with shallow water blackout. But there's risks in every depth of spearfishing, like in 100%. Your only bit of safety equipment is your buddy. I agree with you. But it seems to be that year mark or maybe a little bit beyond where they really start to push the depth and push their limits. And then if they haven't developed that good habit or those good habits of having a buddy and being a good buddy, then it seems like that's where this real sticking point gets. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And that's where we just want to mould people early, I guess, and get those mentors in all the clubs that the young guys look up to. Because if you're in that position and the young guys are looking up to you, they're going to do what you do. And so if you're leading by example, I think it's pretty easy for the young guys to follow. It's pretty hard to hold your breath to the point of blackout. So to have a hypoxic blackouts is pretty uncommon. But when people aren't breathing correctly and you get it's pretty easy to hyperventilate, and every person's different, and some people are really susceptible to it and other people aren't. But you don't know as you're coming up, and there's a lot of little tips and tricks that I, even in the last couple of weeks, that I've learnt that I didn't fully understand, that are going to help people understand their own body and how having just a shit sleep can affect what's going to happen. I think it's important to get a culture around it, being a little more conservative. We used to push our limits pretty hard. And, I've had a samba before, and it was diving a cave that we've dived 100 times before. It was an easy dive for me, but I swapped my wetsuit top over. I was in a 5 mil. I got hot. I put a 3 mil on. Didn't change my weights. Made a dive into that cave and cooked myself coming up. Reweighted after that dive, and then I was really breathing heavy afterwards. My legs were pretty cooked and just hyperventilated. Had another dive on the cave. Missed a fish. Got my spear stuck in the cave and trying to get it out. Couldn't get it out, and then shot to the surface like a rocket because I, didn't quite keep calm and overstayed my welcome and got to the surface, and away I went. And luckily I had someone right there with me. But it's just an average dive for us, and a few little things change, and then that happens, and it can happen to anyone. I don't think we need to scare the fear of God into everyone about it. It's just being aware and understanding it and how to deal with situations, and not just blackouts. plenty of other crap that can go wrong, and that's what we want to involve in this little program, is just general safety. Like the amount of young guys you take out and you turn around and you've got a loaded gun poking you in the hip or pointed at your chest, and young guys don't always think, but if you teach them, they start to think, and there's plenty of bits and pieces, and we're going to include boating safety and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully roll it out, in the next 12 months.
The problem is, like, anytime you have the word safety in a headline or in a topic, you can immediately see tumbleweeds go past, and you can hear the snores start. I think the podcast episodes where I've got safety in the title have been the least downloaded, and that they can be some of the best content. But it's hard to sometimes get guys to, like, it's the same when you go onto a work site or in a job site in Australia, you've got to do a safety induction, and it's the same safety induction that you've heard 55 times. But with spearfishing, arguably the risk is it definitely needs to be understood and mitigated. You need to understand what those risks are in your particular diving context and then plan accordingly. But yeah, obviously, I'm with you guys 100%.
Yeah, I think we've got to try and work out how to make it fun. And like you say, if you're just preaching at people, they don't listen. And it's the same with the older generation screaming at us, wear a rig line and a float, and they say, that's what'll save you. But then those two jump in together, and one will swim one way and one will swim the other way, and they've got their rig line and their float, but their float's 30 metres behind them, and their buddy's 100 metres away from them, and a rig line and a float doesn't do shit really, unless you got someone.
I'll be able to find your gun on the bottom, but I won't find your body because probably the current's taking you 50 metres away from it. But but I mean, the float and flag does play a part. Like, it can be awesome for your diving context in terms of letting boating traffic and stuff know, and it gives your buddy the general idea. But I've dived with real guns up on the Great Barrier with the Back to Basics boys, and we would, I don't know if they'd be happy with me telling this story, but we were diving straight reel guns, and it was probably one of the safest dive sessions I've ever had. Like, these boys, they work a system, and they work a system tight. Like, if my fish holes up and we're in current, I already know someone's headed down to get that fish because they're watching what's going on. Even in bad viz, they just seem to have this unspoken communication a lot of the time, and it's amazing when you partner up with the same people over a period of years. Like, just so much stuff you don't have to even talk about it. Just
you don't have to talk. But that makes it. It makes you so much more comfortable, and that's we dive with real guns a lot, unless it's pretty dirty. But most of the time you can see each other, and the last club comp we had there was a big school of pennant fish, and I was on the bottom, and they swam between myself and Angus Knox, who was on the surface, and it was a super easy dive. He could have smoked one no worries, but he let them swim by because I was on the bottom, and it's really reassuring having someone like that who's not going to, piss off and chase a fish because his buddy's on the bottom. It makes you feel safe and you feel comfortable, and every single dive is a good dive because you got someone watching you.
That switch where you choose to be a good buddy and stick with them, and then vice versa, like, both of you have to have your self-discipline on in order to make a buddy system work. Yeah.
And I guess it comes with time as well. It is hard when you're young guys and you haven't seen fish like that before.
Or you haven't been out for 2 months.
All that, yeah. Yeah. But we try not to preach at guys and give them another reason to do something that results in them getting more fish. Even little things like when the young guys jump in the pool for the first time and they're swimming laps with a snorkel in your mouth, and you say, you don't want to do that because all those bubbles are going to scare fish off, and they pull that snorkel out of their mouth so quickly. But if you tell them, don't do that because, if you black out, it's a funnel in your mouth, it goes over their head and they're in the pool with their snorkel in their mouth again. As soon as you make it relevant to spearfishing and getting more fish, the young guys seem to want to listen and do what you say. I don't think we want to progress anyone's journey any quicker than it should, or change what we've experienced a great deal. I just think we want to equip guys with the appropriate skills to be able to handle a situation if it does occur. I think pool training is a big thing with that, because you're training your own personal hypoxic threshold and CO2 tolerance, and when you do get that month or two out of the water, you're still holding your breath and you're still in the water, and you're comfortable when you get back in the water. And that, a lot of it's just keeping your head and keep it comfortable.
And you can work on those micro skills without the distraction of hunting fish, because sometimes when you're out hunting fish, you're not worried about your finning technique or making sure you're streamlined or any of the 1%ers that will allow you to actually dive deep and perform at a greater level than you are now. But, so sometimes that time in the pool, it's just like there's no fish. Some people would say it's boring, and it probably is, but you can work on these very small skills in isolation. And when you do go out into the ocean, sometimes it's you can actually immediately tell that it's improved your dive technique.
Yeah, and like you say, all the 1%ers, you get enough little 1%ers and they add up, and it makes a huge difference.
It sounds like that freediving course is very much like that. Like there's no fish. You're just working purely on the freedive component to spearfishing, which they are different, but we share the whole entire breath hold experience with them. So they've got a lot to teach us.
Yeah, and it is different, but and you can still shoot fish with shit freediving technique, but it's certainly a lot easier if you've got good technique, and you're going to hold the bottom a little longer, and you're going to be a little bit less offensive in the water. Like if you've got a flighty fish and you've got arms and legs going everywhere, they're not going to come as close as if you're tucked in nice and tight and you've got your gun by your side and you're nice and smooth through the water. It all relates, and it's I don't care what the older generation want to say about freediving. It's a super important part of spearfishing.
I think the fact of the matter is, with a lot of the older guys, right, a lot of the diving was done in shallower than sort of 40 feet, and there were fish in the shallows, and the gear was pretty good for that sort of depth. And some of the guys went out and they dived the depths that we dive now, and the ability was no different, right? But nowadays people can access the information, and they have really good equipment, and the fish are often deeper. So guys are learning these techniques, so they need to learn a different way of diving so that they can do it safely. If you're going to dive shallower than 30 feet your entire life, perhaps you might get away with, because your percentage chance of blacking out is probably a lot lower than someone that's diving 60 feet. I would argue that it's still great to have a buddy even in that depth.
I don't want to encourage people to go and dive deeper. I don't necessarily think that everyone should go out and dive deeper, but some people are, and you can tell them not to, but they're still going to do it. So that's where I think teaching them how to. What we always were told was, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and I just always thought, piss off, we're going to go and do it. We're young blokes, we know better, and people are still like that. And so I think instead of saying don't do it, say, hey, maybe learn this and it'll help you.
If your buddy had a blackout on your next spearfishing trip, think, what would the outcome of that be? Do you know how to revive someone from a blackout? Would you even be in a position to do something about it? Or would you be diving, chasing after a fish as your buddy sinks down to the bottom of the ocean? Do you know where most blackouts happen? Do you know what you can do to minimize your risk of having a blackout? My name is Ted Hardy, and I'm the founder of freedivingsafety.com. In my free online course, you will learn the truth about shallow water blackout, the myth of, I don't push myself, I know my limits, I'm in tune with my body, how to minimize your risk of having a blackout, and most importantly, how to save your buddy's life if they have one. Visit freedivingsafety.com to sign up for your free course today. Dive safe out there. It's just not even that hard.
Handmade spear guns from the USA, killshotspearguns.com, have made rugged, functional, simple spear guns utilizing the best components. Check them out at killshotspearguns.com. Save $30 on any timber spear gun. Use the code NOOB. visit killshotspearguns.com. All right, cool. Let's chat about this training you did. So you've lobbied Adrian Wayne and the AUF. Is USFA involved as well, or is it just AUF at this stage?
Not yet. It's just through the AUF. I've got nothing to do with the USFA really, but I have had a few USFA guys message and call, and we are going to try and work with them to get something as well. But once we get this one off the ground, we'll have a model, and then we can share it with everyone.
So for our USA or our Kiwi cousins and the UK as well, I guess, what we're talking about here is the major governing bodies. There's two in Australia that govern spearfishing, and most of the clubs belong to either one of these two organisations. So AUF has created this scenario where they're training people that are I'm guessing in leadership positions in the spearfishing clubs to become spearfishing or freediving instructors. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Leaders that are also, physically fit enough to, because the instructor course is fairly challenging. You've got to, and I think when we get ours accredited, it might be slightly different, but you got to do a 40-metre free dive. You got to do 30 metres with no fins, 100 metres in a pool, rescue someone from 25 metres. There are a bunch of different criteria that you've got to be able to do. So it's got to be someone up to that challenge, but also, someone that's good with teaching and a bit of a role model in the club so that people want to listen to them.
Yep. Okay, cool. And so the intention is to run these safety workshops. Are you going to run courses as well?
So we're encouraging people to get a training night similar to what we've got going on. And then, once or possibly twice a year, depending on the size of clubs, we're going to run the course. Obviously, not everyone's going to want to go to it. I wouldn't expect someone that's 60 or 70 to want to go along and spend their weekend doing that. But I think it's going to be super valuable for young guys or people just new to the sport. And it'll either be included in your club fees or be super cheap, depending on what sort of insurance we're up against. But at the moment, it's looking like if your club fees are something like $85 to $100, then it'll probably be covered. If you come from a club that's doing it a bit cheaper because they're in your club or whatever, you might have to pay $50 or $60 for it. And it's going to be up to each club, really.
Yep, cool.
But we're going to have a little guideline of what we think you guys should be doing. It's going to, because I think it's like $500 just to do the basic freediving course, which most spearos can almost skip. To an extent, because the second level of freediving course is where you learn the good stuff, really. The first one is teach an idiot to put your head underwater.
The things I got out of the first one were just some basic ideas about streamlining, fitting technique, and really practicing the mechanics and the practice of practicing a shallow water blackout rescue. And just drilling that. And like I did bronze medallion surf training when I was young and that, but the disconnect you have kinesthetically, like your body has just sort of forgotten some of the mechanics of these things. And like, if you think about it, like your buddy blacks out, you haven't done a drill for 6 years or something. Like, you might grab him. You might lose a few seconds. You're probably still going to do okay. But it's one of those occasions, one of those rare things in life that you wish you'd practice, I think, at that moment where you go, holy shit, I wish I'd just drilled this a few times, because I'd be looking after my mate and he'd have a much greater chance of, regaining consciousness and all the rest of it all the faster. So that was one of the huge takeaways I got from a stage one. But I hear what you're saying.
No, hopefully, none of us ever have to be in that situation, but you want to be prepared if it ever does happen. And that's the other thing I say to the young guys. I don't want to sound like I'm doom and glooming you too much. We're just being prepared for something that hopefully won't ever happen.
So this course that the clubs are going to be running, hopefully we're going to get this thing going Australia-wide, and possibly this thing could take off even on an international level. What's going to actually be involved, and how many sort of man hours are we talking, and how much is theory and how much is practical?
So there is quite a bit of theory. How much of it we include, I don't know, but understanding how your body works is fairly important, I think. And so you can't cover it all in a 2 or 3 hour session. So it's probably going to be a weekend and then maybe a couple evenings or one evening before the weekend or something like that. So you might spend 2 hours going through the basic stuff on a Wednesday night or something, and then the next Saturday you might spend another 3 or 4 hours doing some theory and then some pool stuff, and then you'll get out maybe on the Saturday arvo and you'll go and do a little bit of the technique stuff, followed by an arvo of spearfishing, and then the next Sunday you'll spend half an hour going back over a few things and then get back out there in the water. And the biggest thing is going to be how many people and how many sort of supervisors there are available at any one club. Can't expect one bloke to take 12 young guys out and
about four, like, especially if they're like fairly early in their spearing, like there's just too many moving parts going on there, and you're in the open water a lot of the time.
The freediving guys stay 4, and that's without guns in your hands. So add guns to it, and then you might. Yeah.
I have mates that hit me up to learn all the time, and I've taught quite a few people to spear now, and I've kind of developed my own sort of 2-day process to get people to a point where you think, oh, yep, they no longer need me to, like load their gun and just walk them through every facet of the diving. But 2 days is a fair block of time. And I have some of them go, oh, can't you just take us out and we'll just learn on the fly? And I go, yeah, we can do that, but it's a really shit way to learn. And and there's just too much to it.
And it's frustrating for you if they're jumping in a boat with people that have got no idea, and particularly if it's your boat and you've got a fiberglass boat and they drop their weight belt and they smash it up the side as they're getting in and out the boat. All little things like that. Just there's a lot to consider. But we're getting there, and there's a lot we've got to nut out. And we're certainly in the early stages, but it's all looking promising, and it's going to be really good to get the training sessions underway in all the clubs too, I think. Once all the clubs sort of get a really well-structured training program going on, that they'll not only be teaching everyone the good stuff, but they'll find a huge increase in numbers that are interested in coming along and joining up with the clubs, which financially for clubs is a big thing. And the more people you get involved, the more fun it is for everyone, the more people you got to have a beer with at the end of a comp, or and so I think it all starts with those sort of little training things. And then we get new people every week, and not all of them stay, but some of them do. And we've got a bunch of girls that are coming along that have never spearfished but think it looks like fun, and they're starting to get fish. And then we've got a young guy who lives up the road from me who couldn't swim about 9 months ago, and he can do a full 25-metre lap underwater on one breath now, and it's a really good way to grow the club as well as teach people. And I don't like socialising really, so it's my little social outlet as well, because I'm not particularly interested in going out to the pub on a Saturday night or anything like that.
Having a real practical outlet where you can train, you can learn some of the micro skills, you can socialise, you can plan events in the future, and those regularly sort of scheduled in events, as long as the workload's shared and you've got a decent sort of training structure and that. Like, I like getting in the pool and swimming around with a bunch of people that love spearfishing. Like, even though we're in a pool and there's no fish, it's in some ways it's even better, because like when you're out on the boat and the focus is hunting and putting fish in the esky, the cooler, the chili bin, the focus sort of goes out of sometimes just the friendships and the social aspect. So like when you're just training in a swimming pool, the stakes aren't so high, so you can sort of relax a bit more, but you still get the training in. It's a good balance. I like it.
Yeah, and you catch up and you talk a bit of shit and have a laugh, and and we're not there to compete with each other. We're just there to have fun, and it's a good time. And you come out of it feeling good. So carbon dioxide is a narcotic. That's why you feel good when you hold your breath.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good insight. I actually didn't think of that. If guys are interested in joining any spearfishing clubs, I'd encourage them to go to noobspearo.com. Up in the menu there's a Spearfishing Club Connections page, and it's broken down into countries. And I've got a really good directory going there. Like, it's pretty comprehensive for Australia. There's quite a few in the US, and there's quite a few in the New Zealand as well. If your club is not in there, I'd love it if you just follow the instructions in there. Reach out to me and pump it in. But we're going to try and keep up with what Tom's doing here with these courses and how they unravel in the future. And I'll keep you informed on the podcast. But also, if you want to go to auf.com.au, you will learn more about what's happening there as well, I'm sure. But I wanted to move on, Tom. I wanted to really get into your freediving and spearfishing journey. So you grew up in that sort of, is it?
Well, yeah, I was in Dorrigo, which is about 45 minutes from any ocean. It's in the hills behind Coffs. But Dad grew up spearfishing in Sydney and came up here and then had the kids, and we sort of spent a lot of time at Urunga every weekend, really. We'd be down the hill and either surfing or diving or fishing. And then as we got a bit older, sort of it became a once every couple of months sort of thing, partying and whatever got in the way. And so there was a little bit less spearfishing. And then I moved around the East Coast a bit and then ended up back here. And my partner, Lisa, her dad was a commercial fisherman for about 30 years in Coffs, and he was a dead keen spearo and good mates with Brett Verco and that sort of class of diver. So he was pretty knowledgeable, and hanging out with him got the bug back in a big way.
Yeah, righto.
He takes his boat up to Fitzroy Reef every year, and so we go up there and spend a week out there on the boat. And it sort of really came back when I moved back to the Coffs area when I was, I can't remember how old I was now, but a little while ago now. And I can't ever see myself going anywhere because it's spectacular here.
A lot of people complain, and I think people new to the area, like I've driven through too, and ended up sort of heading down more to Kempsey and diving some of the headlands down around there. But I think one of the things with Coffs is there's a lot of green zones, particularly on the inshore stuff. Is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, there are, and a lot of people do whinge about it, and I can understand it to an extent. And sometimes you think it would be nice if they spread it out a little bit and gave some other areas a few of them and opened a bit up to us. But at the same time, not for the entire fishery, but for a lot of species, it's the reason we have got so many big blue bars and blue bar parrotfish and mangrove jack, and the snapper fishery here is relatively healthy. It does get a lot of pressure. I think the jewfish around the east coast of Australia are in a lot of trouble, but in Coffs we've got large areas where they're protected, and so our fishery is relatively healthy, I think, compared to the rest of the country for jewfish. And I think it's pretty important to have those protected areas in a place like Coffs. There's a lot of people come here recreational fishers, and we didn't have the sanctuary zones. I think we'd have a hard time catching a lot of fish we do.
Yeah. What about, so are you dealing with a lot of sandy coastline? Is the structure sort of few and far between there, or have you got quite a lot of reef, and what's the bend cost like?
It's reef everywhere. Most headlands have got some sort of reef off them, and then the headlands are pretty good for jewfish as long as the viz and the swell lets you get in there. And then there's usually a reef trailing off most headlands. There's a few that don't have a great deal of structure, but you only have to get a few hundred metres off the coast and it's reef again. And I mean, from between Evans Head and Southwest Rocks, really, it's just a whole lot of reef, and a lot of it is fairly deep, but there's plenty available. And a lot of the local guys sort of know more of the inshore reef, and so we've got a lot of spots that we can sort of rotate. The more obvious places like South Solitary and North Solitary, where there's a big island sticking out of the ground, they cop a lot of pressure, but there is a lot of ground here to cover, and we're pretty lucky.
That idea of rotating through spots and sort of sharing the love around the reef systems instead of just going to the same 3 spots every time you go spearfishing is a huge thing that, to be honest, I still struggle with. Like when you get out infrequently, there's a real temptation to just go and bash those same few spots that have been Yeah, and it's just a bad habit of a lot of spearos. What's your advice to them?
Go and learn some new ground, because you'll find another one, and then you'll have 4 spots to go and back. But if you go and spend a little bit of time finding one more spot each time, and then all of a sudden you've got this little quiver of spots that you can go to, and it doesn't take, not every time is going to be successful searching new ground, but when it is, geez, it's rewarding.
We've got local guys here like Trevor Ketchian and Tim McDonald, and those guys seem to froth on finding new ground just as much as they froth on finding good fish. In fact, I think they dive
down to light up.
Yeah, and I think they just love dropping down, seeing a whole bunch of life, chucking a mark on it, and it's like, keeping it present in the sack instead of, because I don't know, there's a scarcity mindset that some of us are guilty of too. It's like, oh, there's fish here, I've got to shoot them. And it's like, well, why not just take one? Yeah, there's plenty of fish left, go to the next reef. But it's, I don't know, let's be honest, there is a thing within us, I think, sometimes that drives us to do that. Like, have you had those battles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone goes through that stage where, and people get ownership over places as well. But yeah, you'll hit a spot and it's good, and you think it's not going to be good next week. I'll get a few more, or someone else might come here today and get those fish. And that's a big thing we're trying to change around here, is that culture of taking more than you really need. And I understand that some people travel and they want to get a few fish to take home because they've come from down south or whatever. But how much fish do you really need? I try not to say anything to most people unless I think they've gone well over the top. But you see some of the death piles that people send you and say, we got this off Coffs, and I just think, oh, it's fucking disgusting. You don't need that many fish. And some of these guys are up here every month or every 2 months, and I don't know, I eat a lot of fish and I couldn't eat that in a month.
Hey Shrek, Jeremy here, man. I'm back. Just wanted to say the podcast is growing from strength to strength, my friend. Hoorah, man. I just wanted to say thank you for your continual support from the Noob Sparrow listeners, subscribing, reading, writing, and submitting kick-ass spearfishing adventures from all over the planet. Your listeners kick ass, and Shrek, my friend, so do you. All you guys, come check out the next edition of Spearing Magazine at spearingmagazine.com. Jeremy out. Tommy, we've been rudely interrupted. Adam Stern is joining us. As usual, he's tardy, but
he's woken from his abalone slumber.
Super late.
Wakey. It's Adam Stern. Adam, we're easily 45 minutes into this interview. Welcome along.
Yeah, it's out of it. Do you know what I've been up to? I'm in South Australia, and I forgot about the time difference. We were cray diving, and it was bloody excellent.
Yeah, I feel like an absolute dickhead.
It's all good. I felt like you were deliberately done it so that Tom would have to do a full solo.
No one.
I know how much Tom loves talking.
He does. He does. Interestingly, though, Tom did the instructor's course with you last week. You did. You had 12 people along. I would like to hear. It's good timing, actually. I'd love to hear a bit about the experience of the instructor's course, because I plan to do it myself. I'm not approaching the dive fitness that Tom's already told me about, but tell me about the 12 people you had and the personalities and the challenges that people had.
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. It was probably as far as diving ability goes, it was the best instructor course I ever taught. So the challenge with this group was really taking what I was kind of feeling like was they're all very rough cut diamonds, right? Like everyone was like an experienced good diver, but they basically had very little to no formal freediving education. So like all the safety levels were very low. All the sort of I suppose like the training procedures was just like we had to start everything from scratch. Like, this is how you dive on a line. This is how you keep someone else safe while we're diving on a line. This is a safe diving progression. We had some people like, oh, I did 30 meters yesterday. I want to do 40 today. And I was like, well, no, that's not safe. You've got to get there gradually, buddy. But the great thing about having really experienced divers was that you could give feedback and they would take it on board straight away, right? So usually, someone comes up from a dive, you're like, hey, and they're like, oh, I don't know, my equalization wasn't working, la-di-da-di-da. And you give them the feedback they need, and it takes them like a day or a few dives to apply it. But in this instance, you would give them feedback, and they would take it on board and adapt and kind of respond to the feedback instantly. And so they progressed incredibly quickly. And it was great. And I think we spent probably more time than I usually would on theory, just catching everyone up on theory and they're really hammering in the theory. We did it so much that they started to hate me for it. But paid off, didn't it? Oh my God, you should have seen them smashing out their presentations at the end, teaching us all about freediving physiology. It was great. They were honestly like a really rock solid group. And I feel like we've just sent like a whole lot of really great instructors out into the world.
Really great asset for all the clubs around as well. Like the group of people that came along. And I think we touched on this over the 2 weeks. Not every instructor is good for everyone. And so we had a really diverse group. And so everyone in the spearfishing community is going to be able to find a really great mentor out of the group of people that came along. So I think it's a really good start to the little project.
This is awkward for me, Tom. You've pretty much changed 180 degrees since Adam arrived. Before, all I heard was negativity about Adam and his personality and his diving and the whole course in general. So I'm happy he's here now to provide some accountability to you.
He's hard work.
I'm going to listen to the podcast, aren't I?
Don't worry, Tom. I got your back. I'll edit it out, bro. That'll just be our private episode.
No, all good.
Nah, cool. So you've mentioned sort of some of the safety and stuff. There was equalising things, like a lot of like spearfishing. Last time I chatted with you, Adam, I was having my brain blown by relatively simple equalising techniques just because I haven't dived the depths that, most average freedivers have. So
yeah, sure.
Was it similar with a lot of the instructors, or did they adapt to the new equalising techniques and taking on depth? Did they acclimatise to depth quite quickly? What was some of the struggles with that?
Look, they definitely acclimatized to depth quite quickly. And as for throwing out some what are seemingly basic or seemingly common equalization techniques that, made a world of change, they were able to basically, like I was kind of saying before, just like take it on board really quickly and then, use it to really go deep. I had, two of the divers learned how to do mouthfill equalization probably faster than anyone else I've ever had before.
Wow.
It was a really impressive group, honestly. Not even blowing smoke up their asses. It's a really impressive group. If anything, they all need to have, they all need to have themselves taken down a peg or two, right? Like, it's probably good for them. But no, they were honestly a really great group.
Who was the funniest? Who was the funniest in the group?
The funniest in the group?
Yeah,
Yusuf. Yusuf from what club is Yusuf from, Tom?
He's from the Barracudas, Yusuf Dib.
Yusuf Dib from the Barracudas is a character like you've never met before.
Yeah, righto. Awesome. You've got to have them, eh? You've got to have them along.
100%.
You need that range of personalities, but they can't all be funny bastards because otherwise you get nothing done.
Well, Tom, Tom was just never stopped cracking jokes. You know what I mean? Like,
I turned up and thought, how on earth am I going to spend 2 weeks with these people? They were talking constantly, and I thought we were going to have major dramas, but everyone was pretty good. It was
good.
He told me that he thought he was going to roll up, Adam, and he was going to have guys like you, like ponytails, like looking like 80s henchmen from like 80s martial art henchmen.
Whoa,
He was worried about the yoga vibe.
I will let you know that I had a man bun well before it was trendy.
Have you still got one? I can't even see it. Oh, he's got
it. Does.
Yeah.
Oh, this thing.
I had a man bun for a long time, and then all of a sudden they became this cool, trendy, hipster thing. And then I thought very long and hard about cutting it off, because obviously you don't want to be confused as a hipster, right? Like that's a really serious thing.
Really, really don't.
Happen to you for someone to think you're a hipster.
Did you supply extension ones for Tommy and some of the other guys?
I offered it, but not everyone took me up on the offer. So I offered
I
Tommy.
also don't have the hair to clip the extensions onto.
Just welded on. Awesome. So what's the plans in the future for these courses? Is this going to be an annual thing, Adam, where you just churn out cash and train up bulk instructors?
Well, I'd like to be honest with you. This project was kind of important for a few reasons. Number one, there are a lot of junior divers joining the spearfishing clubs in Australia, and they look, most of the time a freediving course costs $500, right? Most of these juniors can't afford it themselves, and their parents are usually not going to shell out $500 for them to go and take a freediving course. And so we really wanted to make sure that all the juniors got covered. Like, so everyone that came to these spearing clubs, there would be someone there to teach them how to dive safely and teach them how to dive well. So that was the most important thing. And then after that, we had, I suppose there's an environment right now where you have a lot of spearos learning to freedive or taking freediving courses from freediving instructors who don't spearfish. And so, teaching a spearo teaching a freediving course to a spearo is very different than teaching a freediving course to a freediver. I mean, yes, we're holding our breath underwater, but everything else is different, right? So it's super important for spearos to learn, to take courses or to learn to dive better or to improve their freediving with people who are spearos first and freedivers second. That's how they're going to be diving. They are spearo first, and the freediving element is the breath hold and the diving. So that was really important for me, so we could actually get spearos being taught by spearos. And then there were a few other, I suppose, benefits to doing things like this, but those are the two major ones. And in general, improving this sort of the education level at the spearing clubs, because the truth is that knowledgeable divers are safe divers. You know what I mean? Very few people find out about all the shit that can kill them, and they go out and still dive in the same way, right? So
100%. You're exactly right. But it's like everything, we don't really think specifically about what can actually happen and what do I need to do to mitigate this risk. Tom and I were chatting about it earlier. For sure.
There are some people you teach all the shit that can kill them, and they still go out there and do it. Those people.
Yeah, and that's one of the beauties of our world, though. We have this personal freedom to choose to do what we like, and all we're really trying to do is influence people to make better decisions and better choices for themselves.
That's right. And in the end, if they don't listen, Darwin will get them.
Yeah, well, we got the Darwin Awards, don't we? So it's a wonder I haven't made it.
It'll be another tool to bring people along to clubs and create this community as well. I think if we're all together as spearos, it benefits everyone, and it's just another tool to bring people together as well, I think.
Tom, and I'd love your comment on this, and Adam, it'd be great to get your 10 cents too, but it seems to my mind like when you learn spearfishing, freedive spearfishing, there's a few active components to it. We've got the freediving side of it, then there's the hunting side of it, and then there's the equipment side of it. And I feel like now what you guys are doing is spearfishing clubs now will be able to hopefully cater to some of that freediving education and learning some of the tactile and kinesthetic skills that go along with it, not just theory. And then if guys go to their local spearfishing retail shop, like a specialist retailer, they can learn a lot about the gear and equipment, and most retailers are only too happy to show you that stuff. The other sort of component now that guys can learn onto all of that is the hunting side. And I would argue that it's better to learn hunting sometimes third, because at least by then you've began to adopt relaxed body position and all the rest of it, because you're comfortable holding your breath. So it's kind of a nice logical progression, isn't it? And if you've got the foundations of equipment and freediving, then the hunting is that's the next bit, that's the next progression.
And hot tip, most hunting techniques involve being relaxed and calm underwater. That's about the extent of it. There's more to it than that. If you can be
No, definitely.
laying on the bottom relaxed, you've won half the battle.
Yeah. You guys have done some spearing together too, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. I've missed plenty of good fish.
Adam's a spectacular spearo.
Yeah.
And we've lost him.
Tell us a good story, Tom. Like maybe there's a 50-kilo fish and you gently guided Adam down by the hips to the fish and he still somehow did something. Have you got one of those stories for me?
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Let me just turn my camera off.
He wants to know if you've got a good story about me being a shit spearo.
No, Adam's been pretty good. There's been a couple times where we've run into trouble with fish identification. We were at a pretty well-known spot around here for mangrove jack and
I shot a red bass. Oh, no.
I don't know. We weren't there that long, but we'd put quite a few drops in on the spot and there were good fish in the cave. And this shadow comes out of the depths and Adam has a big grin on his face. And I was like, that's a big jack. That's a really good fish. And it gets closer and closer. And I think we don't always pull the trigger, but we've all had made this mistake of seeing a big wong in a cave and thinking that's a big jack. And and then you go, oh, hang on, it's a wong. But Adam gets to the surface and he's pretty pleased with himself. And we had to give him the bad news that he just shot a big blubber, big sweet lip, and it wasn't actually a jack. That was pretty good. And then him and Matty O, when we went chasing dollies, I think went maybe two fish for 24 shots or something. That was another fun day.
How much fun are they, Adam, when you shoot them for the first time? They go ballistic.
They do. Actually, you know what's funny? Dolphin fish was the first fish I ever shot.
Yep.
A mate of mine took me out the fads and he was like, put the gun in my hand. He was like, all right, just shoot one. I was like, okay.
But like you've got a float line, sometimes you've got a reel line, and then you might be diving around a fad, which is sticking out, and then you've got great opportunities there to get some tangles. And the fish, it doesn't seem to matter where you shoot them. Somehow they're going to pull air and your float line's going to end up tangled and, oh, jeepers, you can have some fun with them.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're great fish.
What's your PB on one? And have you had some of these tangles I'm talking about?
No, to be absolutely honest, I haven't. It's always been pretty simple when I shot a dolly, but I've never shot a big bull. You know what I mean? I've never shot a big dolly. The biggest dolly I ever shot was actually the first one I ever shot, and I couldn't even tell you how big it was because it was like my first time spearing. But I remember being pretty bloody impressed with myself. So,
like hunting dolphin fish seems relatively simple. You know, like. They're not very smart. You don't have to really free dive at all. You just shoot them. But the systems that guys develop in terms of, you know, the lines they put with the boat and where they put you in the water and how you can work it really smart together. Like I dive with a couple of guys, local guys, and I was watching them just like, and after we had done it for 2 hours, I was like, holy shit, you guys were good. Like, just because it was so organised and they really maximised your opportunities. So it was cool.
They can be pretty easy to shoot if you're the first boat there, but if you're not the first boat there, it takes a bit of work to get a bigger dolly.
Yeah, but when you motor up on drifts and stuff, you know, if you cut a wider line and you do it at low revs, you're not going to spook the school. They're not going to sound and head off. So you might get a few more passes and, you know, just simple stuff like that. I really, you know, like being ready to go on the back of the boat and just slipping quietly into the water and bang, there they all are. Like just little stuff. It was cool.
Have you seen young Corbin's fish that he's been getting with us?
I think I have. What did he get? What did he get last?
Oh, he got a 14-kilo kingy last time with us. I think he's 12 or 13 now, and he's all of 40 kilos wringing wet, and he punches well above his weight.
Fantastic.
He's going to be a gun little spearo.
Okay, so back to the instructor's course. You had 10 days. What's the sort of the rough plan to a 10-day instructor's course?
So what we actually did was we did a Wave 3 course over 7 days, and then we did an instructor course over 7 days. So usually an instructor course on its own is 10 days, but what we did instead was we did heaps of the theory that we would have done remotely. So we did it like beforehand, with Zoom, just like we're doing now. So we did a lot of stuff with Zoom beforehand, so we could get there and pretty much just focus on the practical stuff. Mostly because it was, people getting time off work and things like that. So the way it kind of breaks down is we turn up, we get there and ideally we try to just smash out the performance requirements. So the performance requirements are that they're hard enough that you need to be training seriously to do them. And at the same time, because the window to do them is quite small, they need to be quite you can't be struggling to reach them. Does that make sense? There's enough of the performance requirements. There's something like 7 major performance requirements that you have to do. And so if each one of them is really hard for you, there's no chance in hell that you will finish them in the short window that we have. So that you have to be quite fit and you have to be able to do them with ease. And then in an ideal world, everyone just bang, bang, bang does all the performance requirements. And we spend most of the time focusing on teaching, like how we actually teach people to dive, all the little nuances. And then we have to, because it's a course and we have to make sure we pump out a certain standard, then we do all the exams. So, we get them to teach, certain topics, as if we were students in the classroom. We get them to teach certain topics in the water, on the buoy. We get them to teach certain stuff in the pool, introduce all, all the major skills that we need to learn on a course. And that's pretty much it, to be honest, So we have I suppose if you were to break up what an instructor course really entails, you have, most of the time is spent teaching people how to teach. Then you examine them on how well they teach. And then in amongst that, you do all the performance requirements.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Some people can be fantastic divers, but terrible teachers.
Yeah.
So who was the best natural teacher in the group?
All right, the best natural teacher in the group.
And why?
So it was Rexanne Hilliam from, Tom, which club is she from?
From Sydney Spearfishing Club or something like that.
Yeah, from Sydney Spearos. Rexanne Hilliam was the best natural teacher because she was the most structured, as in you could give her any topic and she could introduce it in a really simple way that makes sense to anyone. She'd explain it in just its absolute simplest form, not too complicated, not too convoluted, really simple. And then she'd summarize it all up at the end and bang, there you go. Mm. And she had a formula for it. And that's what a lot of the time what we're really trying to teach when we're talking about teaching information. It's like, how do you take what is effectively a lot of really complex stuff and just simplify it so that anyone can basically pick it up and understand. And she was...
Yeah, to really understand everything.
Yeah.
She's obviously a really intelligent woman and just had her head around it all. And I think it goes to show when you know what you're talking about. She's going to be really good for the Sydney crew, I think.
Yeah, she will. Yeah.
Like a really good asset in Sydney.
Yeah. When we first started, they weren't as familiar with all the kind of materials as I suppose I wanted them to be. And, so I'm like, all right, everyone get up in front of each other, start presenting. And they're just we had some presentations that were just I don't know.
I remember teaching my first English classes, English as a second language. And I had my mentor sitting there in the back seat and she's just got her head down like this, just face palming me, and the worse I taught, the faster I spoke. And then I'm looking at all these beginner, intermediate level English speakers, and they're just deer in headlights, and here's me all sweating and red and stuff. And even with something that fairly well, you think, oh yeah, I know how to spearfish, I know how to freedive. Yep, no worries, I can teach. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. When the rubber hits the road, the actual it's a different experience. The connections that you think you have in your head, actually being able to explain them, even if you're high on verbal intelligence, it seems to be a real difficult skill.
I mean, definitely. You have to. So you think to yourself, okay, I can dive, I can spearfish, I can teach that, I can tell someone else how to do it. But then when you really come down to it, what you need to first start is with the foundation, right? What is essential for these people to know before we can move on to the next step, jumping in the water. And what tends to happen when people don't have a lot of experience with it, or when they haven't put a lot of thought into how and what they're going to teach,
they just start going like, they start rambling and saying, they pull something that, is well above the foundations at the top of the house. If we let's make a house metaphor, right? They start teaching the roof, and then they're like, here's some walls and here's some foundation and here's a window, as opposed to going from the ground up.
Yeah.
And, I think it's kind of natural. I think that, I think, to be honest, that freediving, like breath holding and breath hold diving is incredibly simple. But over the decades, as we've had, freediving instruction and education, we've found ways that is obviously like better and safer to teach things. And knowing, like, I suppose, what is the best and easiest road to walk someone down to make them the best diver they can be in the shortest period of time is more of I suppose that's the skill, if that makes sense, right? Like, anyone can teach something. It's about teaching it well.
Do you think, like, Tom, I'd love your thought on this. Like, do you think it's easiest to teach someone who's just a level or half a level below you, because then the learning that you've done to be one up on them, if you like, is so recent that you can actually remember that experience for yourself, so you can kind of walk them through some of the...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but whereas when you go right 100%. Back to the very start... you go.
You forget how little they know. It's really hard, or I find it's really hard to take those few steps back, and you'll say, do this or whatever, and you'll turn around and be like, I've forgotten how little you know. All right, let's take it back a few steps. Whereas if, that person's not so far behind, you've just been there, and it's really easy because they understand as well, because you're explaining it a little better because you were just there. That's where, I guess, with all Adam's experience, he sort of knows where to start and stop with people. And like I said earlier, he doesn't do much but does so much at the same time. Like, he just knows those little nudges to give you and points you in the right direction. And it seems really effortless, but he obviously knows what direction he's steering you. He actually, on the first day, I don't think anyone dived past 20 metres because we couldn't, because Adam got in our head and told us all these things we were already doing, and we were all thinking about all these things we were already doing, and all of a sudden none of us could dive. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
Made us all look really silly. But then a day or two later, he goes, okay, this is why we did this to you. And then all of a sudden everyone was kicking and ripping. And there's a bit of pop
psychology involved too, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. I think what Tom's talking about is we did a little bit of we Mr. Miyagi'd them. We were doing some wax on, wax off, and they're sitting there like, why am I waxing on and waxing off? And then I just Miyagi'd them, and all of a sudden you had a block a punch.
You strike me more as like that Master Ken. No,
I'll take that.
I think, just from listening to Tom talk about how you were teaching them, like, giving a person a nudge and allowing them to learn themselves, and it's very empowering. When you overwhelm someone with information and then you have to further grade your language and give them a simpler analogy, it has the effect of making people feel stupid or dumb. And when someone is a very good teacher, they just make you feel like you're clever. And they're looking at you going, you're just learning real basic stuff here, bro. But they never make you feel like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of the time when I talk to really experienced spearos on the podcast, their knowledge is like way up there. Like, I can't even ask them the right questions to access some of their knowledge. But getting them to try and communicate some of the concepts to a grassroots level, they've forgotten what they've learned. It's that unconscious competence. And it's a real rough skill. So I don't envy you guys, Tom.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn on how to teach, and like even our first training night back after the 2 weeks there, it was just like, oh shit, this is running smoothly already. I've got a long way to go, but just worked out what to say and when to say it a little better than I did before.
What did you start to enjoy teaching? Was there a topic that you started to think, okay, I've got a little bit of a structure here, I've got a bit of a thing going on, this is maybe something I can work off? I
don't think there was any one particular topic. I think the stuff that you actually really knew was good to teach, but the stuff that we were learning was really hard. I found it, if there was something that I didn't have my head around, I found it really hard to articulate anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So I think you just need to know what you're talking about, and then you can do it. If you don't 100% fully understand everything, then you're not going to do a very good job.
Do you think you're going to enjoy teaching?
To be completely honest, this isn't something that I want to do for me to continue teaching. I'm going to continue doing what I do in my own club.
Yep.
And I certainly will do a little bit, but it's more I just think it's a really valuable tool for the spearfishing community to have. And Angus, who came down with me from our club, is going to be quite good, I think. And then Jordan and Ellie, who were on the Tweed, but they're sort of between Coffs and the Tweed, they're going to be a really good asset on the East Coast. There's going to be a Ballina club popping up, so they'll be helping out those guys, I imagine. And I think those two together, Jordan's a bit of a surfer lad, and Ellie's super athletic chick who hasn't been diving for very long, but is just an absolute weapon. And I think she's going to be quite good at teaching. And
yeah, cool.
We're going to have all these little power couples popping up in all the clubs around the place, and they'll turn into these little mentors for each little club. And
like you sort of said too, like not you're not going to like and get along and be best suited to every instructor, and not every instructor is going to teach everything the same. And you know, your way of teaching, Tom, is going to be different. You know, like you've already learned a way of handing on your skills and knowledge to people. It might just be you've just upskilled, I guess, by doing the instructors and learned a little bit more of the formal stuff behind it.
Yeah.
I think as well that I suppose like the goal of what we did wasn't necessarily to like make a whole bunch of freediving instructors that are going to go out there and make businesses or like just pump out courses here or there. It was really to just increase the level of education and the availability of education to the spearing clubs. You know what I mean? I got an email today from the head of the Australian Water Federation. And I was CC'd into a conversation he was having with someone else, and he was basically just saying, like, there is not a question that the training that just happened will save lives. And I was like, yeah, I agree. Over the years, it will, that knowledge will filter down through the clubs, and we'll do it again to make more knowledge filter down through the clubs.
Yep.
And it goes down to every member there, and then we establish a spearing community with more knowledge and safer practices. Because that's the other thing is like the spearing, the culture in the spearing community is not. I don't think it's a very safe one, in my opinion. Right. So in freediving, we've worked very hard to establish a safety or a culture of safety. And I think that not all of it, but I think a lot of it needs to start being applied to spearing. And I think it will as we keep doing things like this. Because and also in general, spearfishing is a lot more dangerous than freediving, right? Like everything you do in freediving is totally planned. Like, I am going to swim to this depth. It will take me this long. Come and meet me at this depth and watch me swim up the rest of the way. And if I get into trouble, wake me up. Whereas spearing is like, I'm going to go down to whatever depth. I don't know what I'm going to see. I don't know what's going to happen when I shoot whatever fish might be there.
And we're in current.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like the visibility is like
variables all the time.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Yeah, culture shift, I think, is a big thing. Hopefully, to come out of this.
Definitely.
One of the things I want to discuss with some of the governing bodies around spearfishing is becoming more user-based focused. So, like, comps are always going to be there. Comps are great. There's comp divers. A lot of people like comp diving. There's a huge proportion of spearos that don't like comp diving, and maybe they could be introduced to comp diving. I'm not saying that they're averse to it, but at the moment they are. And what other reasons do they have for joining a spearfishing club? Like a lot of spearos, like, they love it. They froth on it. They just want to shoot dinner for their family. They're not interested in competing. It's more of a hunter or even more of a trophy hunting mindset than it is a competitive mindset. And so, but helping those guys to develop skills and relationships that can help them, extend their spearfishing, I think that's a huge thing that clubs could tap into, filling some of those needs. So yeah, for sure. This is a huge part of that, I think.
Yeah, I think among the spearfishing community that's not involved with clubs, the model of a club comp is like, people just think it's gross. A little bit of it comes from not quite being educated on what's going on, but I can also understand where these people are coming from. And I think comps do need to be reassessed, particularly in places like Sydney that are under a huge amount of pressure. We've restructured our club comps, and we've got our species list, and throughout the entire year, you're only allowed to shoot 2 of any of those species. So instead of going out and shooting, your handful of goaties and fusies and kingies and all the easy fish that you can shoot every single comp, you can only shoot 2 of them for the entire year. So you've got to work through your list and be really selective on what you shoot. And we're finding it to be hugely beneficial to the club because more people are interested in the comp now, because a lot of people don't want to go out and shoot those fish because they don't want to eat them, or they can't eat that many fish in that sort of period of time. So it's, people are becoming greener, I guess, and we need to think a little. I don't think we need to radically change things, but we just need to think a little more to the left sometimes. I don't want to change things completely, but we just need to be a little bit more aware of people's attitudes.
Yeah. I think most spearos identify with being sustainable fishermen, though. So I think that's, it's a direction that most people will, I suppose, be happy to adopt or, be happy to go in. But also, Tom, you said that in the Coffs, in your spearing club, that there are no longer any singles competitions as well.
Yeah. Well, no, we're starting to phasing them out. Yeah. There's still there's still a single comp, but we're trying to push towards pairs as the new norm, with some pushback, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's interesting. Changing and shaping culture and doing things for the future, it's not without its challenges, that's for sure. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Darcy while I remember. He put me onto this episode on a podcast called The Outflow, and it's all about the yellowtail kingfish fishery in Australia. And I tell you what, I learned a shitload in about 90 minutes. Like, that is a quantifier in Australia, as you're familiar with, Adam. I saw you smile. But these guys just cover the fishery in depth. I'd love to see more and hear more conversations about things like that too. Some of these competitions and stuff, if they had someone come in and do a deep dive on one particular species, we talk about, age of reproduction begins, why we have the size and bag limits that we do, things like that, how to think more cleverly about seasons and spawning periods and all that sort of stuff. I like geeking out and learning about fish. I think most spearos are keen on learning those sorts of things as well, and as it has a flow-on effect of making us all think more intentionally about it all.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Aaron Puckeridge and his mate from uni, can't remember his name, Hayden maybe, are studying a bunch of the fish from the Blue Water Classic this year, or will have done it by the time this comes out. And so hopefully we'll have some interesting results on what they've gathered from the fish that are taken during the Classic. And it's going to affect, well, they're studying more than just that. I think they're looking at the tourism benefits and all that sort of thing. But bag limits and size limits are something that have been talked about quite a lot around here at the moment by spearfishing and line fishing clubs. And I think we might see a review on a few different things in the coming months, which I welcome, but I don't think some people will welcome. But I think, that the bag limits around here are a little bit dated.
Is Adam competing in the Blue Water Classic?
He was going to, but I don't think he's going to have time now. He's going to be down.
No, I want to. Yeah, I'm in Mount Gambier in South Australia at the moment.
How long are you there for?
I'm here till Friday.
Okay.
Yes,
tomorrow.
No, next Friday.
Oh, okay. I fly in. I think I come in on the Sunday.
Why are you going? You turning up late?
Yeah. I'm doing the Adam Sellers haircut. Benkenstein one.
Yeah.
I'm doing my stage 2. I'm way back down a couple of levels from Tom.
But hold on, if that's the case, you should be coming before the weekend, right?
Well, I'm planning to do my instructors with you in the future, but I need to get up to some sort of semblance of a respectable level before then.
No, what I'm saying is I'm going to be here when you get here.
Oh, you're going to be here?
Yeah.
No, I'm coming next Sunday. I'll be there. Sunday week.
I think I'll be here.
Okay.
I think so. Anyway.
We'll be having beers. We'll be having beers.
100%. But yeah, I wanted to go to the Blue Water Classic. But yeah, because I'm going to be I'll be leaving here on the 20th. So I think I'll be leaving here on the day it actually starts.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm excited about this initiative, guys. Well done for just getting it up off the ground. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it in the future as it sort of slowly unravels, because it's a complex thing, like taking on a project like what you guys have done. And but it's cool. You've got an entire country of people that are open to it, I'm sure. And hopefully the podcast just gets the message out there a little bit that some of these things are coming on the radar, and it'd be great if we can get all the governing bodies in on it, and this can be something that becomes standardised.
Yeah, and if anyone
that would be the dream.
Reach out.
Cool. Tommy, they can find you at Tommy_Doz. So I'll link that up in today's show notes. If you go to noobspearo.com / what are we going to do? Instructor.
Can't the ball sack anymore.
we can do repaired ball sack.
How about noobspearo.com / Tommy, TOMMY, and I'll have the Tommy's socials as well as Adam's. If you have any inquiries about freediving courses or doing your instructors, Adam's got a host of phenomenal freediving resources there, and I'm sure Tommy will be happy to answer any of your questions about what we've chatted about today. But awesome, gentlemen, really cool to catch up with you.
Yep, thank you. And quick shout out to Adam's instructors who helped out with us, Max and Lynn. They were bloody legends and put in hours and hours with the guys, getting them up to scratch with all the theory. So another big thanks to them.
Awesome, boys. Over and out. Hey guys, I hope you're as excited as I am about this new initiative, rolling out freediving courses to noobs in spearfishing clubs with, really well-regarded spearos in these clubs. I think it's absolutely cool, and I'm frothing about it. It was awesome that Tom and Adam came and joined me. Thanks, fellas. In 2 weeks, we're coming back for 101 Tight-Ass Spearo. This is a really cool chat. Trevor Kitchen comes and joins me. We do a livey, and we've got voicemails and emails and tips from the community. Trevor and I share our philosophy on gear and how to save money in the right places. If you're a noob and you're just buying your first set of gear, you're going to save hundreds of dollars. But even if you're experienced, there might be a couple of things in here. And as usual, your input is always welcome at noobspearo.com. You can comment on show notes or in the Noob Spearo community on Facebook. Come and do so. As usual, if you love the show, I'd love it if you become a patron listener. Go to patreon.com / noobspearo. You can do that, or go to noobspearo.com, head up into the About section, and there is a Buy Us a Beer page where you can also donate some cash if you want it. But there's no obligation to do so. Keep loving the show, sharing the stoke, share this show with your mates. As usual, it's always appreciated. That's it for me today. Super long-winded, but I'm out. Today's Noob Spearo podcast is proudly brought to you in partnership with Adreno Spearfishing Supplies. For your next piece of spearfishing equipment, head to adreno.com.au. Enjoy flat rate shipping Australia-wide. There's a huge range of gear, and you can save $20 on every purchase over $200 when you use the code Noob Spearo. Better yet, drop into their Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne or Perth megastores. There's another one on the way, by the way. Use the code Noob Spearo to save in-store or online at adreno.com.au. Boom. Today's Noob Spearo podcast is brought to you by Neptonics.com. For US divers, Neptonics is the one-stop shop for all of your spearfishing essentials. They got free shipping on every order over $99. Now you can use the Noob10 code to save 10% off anything and everything store-wide. 10% off store-wide. Use the code Noob10 at Neptonics.com. Boom.